All right, friends, in studio with us, we are honored, elated, tickled, and excited to have the mayor of Fargo, Tim Mahoney, joining us in studio. So good morning, Tim.
Good morning. How are you?
I am on top of the world today. Listening audience, you should know that we are pre-recording this show because Tim is heading down to Frisco in just a few hours. So prediction for the game, Tim?
I think the Buys are going to win by 7.
By 7. So that's closer than what other people are saying.
Well, I think that Alabama team is a tough team. I think they've taken some kids that may have gone to Alabama. Alabama's going for national championship. I think we're going to see some big players out there.
So, yeah, Jacksonville State is obviously a formidable opponent. Have you gone down to Frisco previously?
I have gone previously. I've only missed one of the championship games, so This is going to be fun, though. This is for number 5.
Yeah, holy cow. Do they give you a ring as mayor?
I wish I could talk them into that, but no, not so far.
Well, looks like I know what to get you for Valentine's Day then. Is a wonderful
You would really
ring.
make me happy. Thank you.
Tim, before you became mayor of Fargo, what was your past profession? What was it that filled your time? Because I don't think a lot of people know this about you.
Well, I'm a general surgeon. I've been doing general surgery for 40 years, which is kind of hard for people to imagine. But I've always done that. And a kind of midlife crisis, you get into what should I do other in my life? And what began to happen was I said there's other ways that we can do something in the community, and that's when I ran for city commissioner.
Yep.
And then this continued to evolve. So now I do part-time surgery and part-time mayor.
You do part-time surgery still?
Yeah, I still do an elective practice, but it's a lot easier. Both the hospitals take trauma calls, so I don't have to get up at night anymore, so I like it.
What an interesting dichotomy to be part-time surgeon, part-time mayor, all the time awesome, right?
Yeah, it's great.
Now, Tim, people probably got to know you first during the flood fights of the past. What's the prediction now for what's coming up here in the spring of 2016? Are we going to be wet again?
You know, this looks like a good year so far. I'm a little concerned about El Nino starting to hit California and if we would get a snowpack. But right now we had a preliminary meeting and we're looking pretty good for this spring. And we're hoping we're going to have one of those boring springs we had like last year.
Yeah,
everybody
I was
seems
golfing
happier.
by April.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
So that kind of boring spring is something I look forward to, no doubt.
You know, and it's something everybody worries about as we get towards the spring, but I'm very hopeful that this will be a good one.
Great. Well, you would know better than us, and so we're going to certainly take your advice that it looks like it could be a boring spring unless El Nino comes in and rocks us with some snow, correct?
Yeah, I think that what you've seen in the Mississippi area right now and the flooding they're having, you really get concerned about changing weather patterns. And Boston got hit, now the Midwest is getting hit. A little concerned about next year what might happen to us if it's going to march that direction.
Okay, well, we will certainly be watching and listening for that. Those of you just tuning in, Mayor Tim Mahoney of Fargo joining us in studio. Tim, we find ourselves always doing pretty well in Fargo. Based on national trends and standards, and certainly myself as a realtor, I've watched my comrades from around the country have to deal with hell and high water, as well as major recessions and major spikes in value. Why are we so steady in Fargo?
You know, it's really an interesting economy because it has 4 different bases that help stimulate our economy. So we have the agriculture, which has always been there. And we have the university, which helps us very much. 14,000 students, it's going to climb to 16,000 students. It's continuing to climb. The student population in the community really helps us in many ways. And then you have the business community, which is doing very well. And then you have the medical community. So right now we have 4 major players that really help our economy, and that really helps everything stabilize. If you look at a graph on real estate, you'll see a steady climb in housing prices and a steady climb in that market. And it's kind of hard sometimes for people to say, well, Tim, what happened? My house value went up. Well, that's really what you want to have happen. And then if your house value goes up, as many people do, you sell your house, go into a bigger house or a different house. And what's the average people stay in a house, 8 years? Or
Yeah, you know, the trend used to be 5 or 6 years. And then when the recession hit 2005 to 2008, people just stopped moving. And so the average time that people spend in their house now is actually 9 years.
And the interesting thing I see is we have 2 double bubbles in Fargo right now. We have a young youth bubble that's coming in where you're getting people buying into it just as young couples, young families. And then you have a retiring couple that's coming into the market. And so we have 2 different bubbles and 2 different wants. And you're seeing, we were chuckling about this the other day. You know, when we used to talk about retirement homes, it was used to be a different type of home. Now we have a place where you have a restaurant, you might have a place where they gather in the night, you might have a community room, you might have a hair salon, you might have everything just all encased in that one area. I went out to Riverview one day to give a discussion, and boy, did I get peppered. I mean,
Really?
those people really were paying attention to what's going on in Fargo. What are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that? So we're really developing a community out there that's getting very strong in our area, and this is a community where people seem to like to live.
Well, I would agree wholeheartedly. I just got back. I did my own Frisco trip, but I went to San Francisco this last week, and what a beautiful community that is. And what we lack here in Fargo is aesthetics. Fargo's beautiful in its own accord, but I learned what a hill was for real in San Francisco, and my gams are still really tired from that walk up. And the point I'm trying to make here, Tim, before we go to break, is this: Fargo lacks hills. And it lacks wonderful weather for 3 or 4 months out of the year, but everything else seems to be going right. So where's our soft spot then? If I just name those two soft spots, where's our soft spot in our economy, our community that we need to be cognizant of?
Well, we're a little concerned right now with the western part of the state slowing down on oil and the oil prices being down, which is great at the gas pump. But the reality is our economy going to slow a little bit. So there is some concern over this next year. We may have a flattening of our economy a little bit and how we're going to weather that.
Okay, well, Tim, stick around. We're going to join you again after break. Those of you tuning in, go to livefargomoorhead.com during the break. Find out what your home is worth. This is Real Estate Radio with Erik Hatch. Welcome back to Real Estate Radio. As always, I'm your host, Erik Hatch, and we are joined in studio with the mayor of Fargo, Tim Mahoney. Tim, before we dive into some more discussions of our great community of Fargo, tell us about your family. Do you have a spouse? Do you have kids? What's the story there?
So I'm father of 4.
Wow.
I have older children that are out starting their families, and then I have a young son who's 13. So
Okay.
I've had the joy of having my older children get through the schools, and now I'm in the computerized age, which every day I can check my kid's grades. Every day I can check to see what he's doing. And every now and then I chuckle because my older son, Ryan, I said, I didn't have this. I got to report once every semester what was going on here. But now I can track Dylan all the time. And Dylan, of course, will say, Dad, this is tough.
I'm sure
you know everything
that, yeah.
I'm doing. But it's really fun to watch the changes in education and what's happened. And then if you're an older father, a lot of times you don't hear as well, so you're not bothered by your kids much.
That's really great. Something to look forward to, I guess.
Oh, yeah, it's fun. But it's fun to watch the kids grow up, and they all had a great education in Fargo, and it's been good for them as they've gone on in their lives, and then just their value systems and what's come out of that. We're talking about Martin Luther King Day, and just you shouldn't be judged by the color of your skin, by the content of your character. And that content of your character is really important when you talk about your children. And you just think about that, how you do want your kids to turn out well and do well.
Well, let's talk about schools and education, because not only is it a core piece of what happens here in our community, and it directly affects real estate for those tuning in and wanting to know that extra little oomph about how schools and values affect things. What would you tell an outsider coming to Fargo about our education and our school community, specifically K through 12?
You know, it was really interesting. As a physician, I recruited a lot of physicians to come into the community. And oftentimes they'd ask about the private school versus the public school. And we have great private schools, but we also have great public schools. And they were very surprised. I was surprised how much knowledge, again, you can get from a computer and search out and find out things. But our children do very well in competitions and getting into college, doing things later in life with our public school system. And then we now eat with Jeff Slott, the superintendent of Fargo Schools, and there's all sorts of programs he and I talk about that they have. So I think we have wonderful opportunities in the community, and oftentimes those physicians come back to me many years later and said, you know, I was very satisfied with the school system, very surprised, because I came from the South and we always have private schools and didn't necessarily trust our public schools, and or I came from a different community and we always had to do this, but they've been very pleased with their education and how their children have done.
You know, you and I have had some of the same opportunities. I serve as one of the local tour guides of a sort for incoming physicians at one of our local hospitals. And so I get to drive around these newcomers or people even exploring our community, and they say, well, where are the good schools? Where are the bad schools? And the joy that I can say is that I don't have any idea where the bad schools are, but the good ones are here, north, south, east, west. It doesn't matter. really education is such a core piece to our community. So now if we take that next step, what's the impact that NDSU has? Because you said it was one of the 4 pillars of our community in terms of growth and sustainability. What's the impact that NDSU has on a full range scope? Because what we have are 2 things, I think. Number 1 is we have a great education system that's bringing people from around the world. And number 2, we have an athletics department that is really impacting the amount of dollars that come into our community. What can you say on that?
Well, what happens is you have the impact of the athletics coming in the community, and a lot of people are surrounding us with the Bison and what's gone on there, and we do have top-notch programs that are known throughout the country. But then you get is when we looked at downtown development and what happened, what really was the key for sustainability is when the university moved downtown, because then all of a sudden you had lower-end restaurants, you had stuff the students could afford and go to. Then you also got housing that came downtown. So the reality is that with the merging of NDSU coming into the downtown area, we stabilized the downtown. A lot of us were concerned that you'd have that rapid growth of your downtown and then it would all fall apart. You know, Monty's is moving out now, different things are happening, but there are other things that are coming in to sustain those areas. So what we're seeing is that I think we'll have a more viable, vibrant downtown. There's some huge projects that will be coming forward. You'll see coming forward to the downtown area that will help to make that downtown a very vibrant area. Fargo was named one of the top 10 downtowns in the United States with San Francisco. But I mean,
that's right. Yeah. Well, samesies, right?
Yeah. Same, you know.
Well, absolutely. Again, those of you just tuning in, we have Mayor Tim Mahoney joining us for just a couple more minutes. Tim, give us a forecast. Give us a 2016 outlook for our great community. And you had made mention that some of the slowdown in Western North Dakota could impact us. So maybe touch upon that as well. But what are we to expect in 2016 for real estate, for our economy, and for another Bison Championship?
Boy, number 6, huh? Well, I think what you're seeing in the economy is you're going to see a little slowdown this year with fuel prices being down. The state legislative body is going to have a little bit more difficulty with the tax structure and what they could do to support the cities. What we see is that this year, normally building permits are $250 million to about $350. This year we did another $500 million in building permits.
That's
so Fargo is still moving. You know, we did $1 billion last year, but that was with the Sanford building that was going up. So we still see a lot of growth and development. In housing, we outpaced West Fargo this year with single houses that we haven't done that for a while. West Fargo had been growing faster than us. When you look growth throughout the state, Fargo still is growing faster than any city in the state, and we still have one of the biggest growth in the United States. So we still say we get about 10 people a day coming into the community, and that's about 3,000 to 4,000 people every year that continue to move into our community. We think that's going to flatten a little bit. We've had great growth, but we just feel that in some ways those things might slow down a little bit.
Okay.
The young population is trying new stuff, software, different things like that. We continue to have growth in that area. Microsoft has had layoffs in other areas, but seems to like our area and our business community. So we're cautiously optimistic that we'll have another good year, but it might flatten a little bit.
Well, insightful to say the least. I hope you're wrong about the flattening. However, flat is okay. Downhill is troublesome. Would you agree?
I would agree. And you have to look back in 2008, 2009, what we did and went through that time frame. And so Fargo has always sustained quite nicely through those issues just because we have a great balance.
Wonderful. Hey, thanks so much for joining us in studio. I sure appreciate it. Those of you tuning in, we had a joy of listening to Mayor Tim Mahoney fill us in on the great economy of Fargo and his prediction for the Bison game, which happened yesterday if you're listening. So we'll see if he's right. He says
and the Bison won? Yes.
That's right. Tim Mahoney, thanks so very much for coming in. We'll be back in just a moment. This is Real Estate Radio with Erik Hatch.